Maybe you've had your first panic attack, and that's why you're watching this video. Maybe you're wondering, what is happening to me, and how am I going to get past this, and is there any way past it? So I thought I would do a video today which discusses my experience of anxiety and panic. So today I thought I would just address what actually is panic, and what does serious anxiety actually feel like. I've had friends and other people, acquaintances, tell me in the past that they struggle with anxiety, and when I look at them and look at their behavior and look at their responses to things, I sort of thought, that doesn't seem like the same anxiety that I struggle with every day. So I'm 41 years old, and I have always been anxious ever since I was a child. If you don't know what real anxiety feels like, and I'm talking about the visceral, physical feeling of being anxious, it kind of feels like waking up in the morning and feeling like you did something terrible the day before, and you can't remember what it is, but you're waiting for the police to turn up at your front door at any minute, or that you offended somebody really badly and you feel guilty. It's a really visceral feeling of guilt in the pit of your stomach and in your chest, and it makes my heart race, and I don't know why it's happening. I can't catch my breath, and it just makes me feel like all my levels are up, like I'm on edge. I feel adrenaline running through my veins all the time. It's not a feeling of calm and rest and peace. So that was my kind of baseline in life. It always had been, ever since I was a child. I didn't recognize it, and I thought it was normal to be like that. I thought that was how everybody was. I didn't realize that that's not normal, or at least it's not necessarily healthy. So up until I was about 30 years old, this is how I existed, with an ever-present sense of anxiety about myself, constantly feeling guilty, overthinking everything, second-guessing my actions and opinions and everything that I was saying. It was kind of like I was my own editor, like I was editing everything I was doing in my life, without even realizing that I was doing it, adjusting how I speak to different people based on what I thought their opinions could be and the path of least resistance, so that I didn't end up in any conflict. And it's a very, very complicated thing. And having anxiety changes all of your interpersonal relationships. It changes every minute of every day. It's not something, when it's chronic and it's serious, it isn't something that you feel for a little while and then it goes away. No, you actually learn to manage and run your whole life around this massive thing that is sat there in the pit of your stomach, in your chest, on your shoulder. You actually develop your whole personality around this thing, which is anxiety. And it has a physical feel to it. I cruised through my life up until 30 years old, not realizing that I was anxious, until one day I had a panic attack. And then I realized that all a panic attack is just your anxiety peaking. So all of those feelings of guilt, of judgment, the physical feelings that you have in your stomach and in your chest, the loss of breath, the adrenaline levels, if they surge because of a certain level of stress or a situation that you're in, it can become a panic attack. And I had my first one. I'm not really going to talk about coping strategies because that is at least another course of videos, but this is just a description really of my experience of what it actually feels like, a first-person account of severe panic. So I have had a lot of operations in my life. I have a condition called ectodermal dysplasia. It means that my hands were operated on when I was a child, my feet were operated on many times, and I had a massive amount of maxillofacial dental surgery as I was growing up. So pretty much from 9 years old all the way through my teenage years. So I was very fearful, and a big part of anxiety really is fear. It's being afraid of things, whether it's conflict, something physical, it could be anything. But I think it's not a stretch to say that anxiety is largely based on the emotion of fear. And I was very fearful of constantly going to have surgery done, and it was painful, and with a whole host of other things in my life that shaped me as a person, but that was one big one. And when I was in my late 20s, I went to hospital and I had my lower implants done. So I'd already had dental implants in the top, and that was a traumatic experience because it wasn't as easy then as it is now. And then I had all of my bottom teeth removed. and they did it all in one go. During the course of that procedure, I was awake, and the dentist or the doctor inadvertently gave me too much adrenaline. Now, apparently they give you adrenaline when they're also using anesthetics on you. I overheard the nurse saying, "You may have given him too much adrenaline." Now, shortly before I had that appointment, my father had had a stroke, and that was a very stressful time, and he was in a serious way. So there was a lot of added anxiety and stress because of that situation. During the procedure, the amount of adrenaline, I didn't know this at the time, but the amount of adrenaline that I had been given meant that all of the muscles in my body was spasming. And it was so bad, and I couldn't move anything. So my fingers were rigid, my arms were rigid, my jaw was locked, my spine was bending. And I actually thought I was going to break my own back in this dentist's chair. And I panicked, obviously. So this feeling, I'm trying to explain to you what this feeling was like. It was like intense cramp. I couldn't move. I had pins and needles all over my body, but really serious pins and needles all over my body. And the doctor who was there turned to the nurse and said, "Do you think he might be having a stroke?" Now, because my father had had a stroke quite recently at that time, that made everything worse because I overheard that. And then a very experienced nurse came in. She recognized exactly what had happened, that I'd been given too much adrenaline. And she administered something else to counteract that and then calmed me down. And then gradually this left my body and I got the use of my extremities back and my jaw unlocked and my back didn't feel like it was going to break. And I relaxed. It was a very traumatic experience for me. So I finished that appointment, came out of there. I broke down in tears afterwards with my then girlfriend on the bench outside the hospital because it was just so terrifying. And I had had all of my teeth removed at that time, so that was stressful enough. But then I got back on the horse and I just carried on. In fact, I think the day after that, I went and played a live gig with my band or something without any teeth. It was crazy and there was blood everywhere. But this is, I thought I could do it. I thought I could just carry on. So about a year or two after that, I went through a very difficult time in the relationship that I was in. I had put myself under a massive amount of stress. My anxiety seemed to focus around driving a car. I was driving every day to go to work, probably 60 miles a day through rush hour. So it was like an hour and a half a day. And I wasn't very happy. I'd been through some very stressful things. And one day I was driving to see my girlfriend on the same bit of motorway that I had always driven. And I had my first panic attack. And the first panic attack that I had was so sudden and so brutal that I was on a motorway. I didn't think I could control the car. I couldn't feel my hands. I couldn't move my fingers. And it was exactly what was happening to me when I was in that hospital chair with too much adrenaline. I somehow pulled the car to the hard shoulder and my whole body just went again in exactly the same way. And it was like that experience with the adrenaline in the hospital had shown my body the way to have a panic attack. That's what it seemed like to me. So I was on the side of the M4 in my car, in the driver's seat, but my body was spasming so badly that I was straightening out in the seat and I had pins and needles. I was completely white and I couldn't move. So I tried to get my phone and I couldn't hold my phone properly, but I managed to get it in the palm of my hand and then use my fingers to dial 999. And I called an ambulance because I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought my heart is racing. It's going to burst out of my chest. It was painful, like how hard it was beating and how fast it was beating. I couldn't breathe. It was absolutely terrifying. It was one of the most scary things I've ever experienced in my life. Luckily, somebody picked up the phone in the emergency services. I said ambulance, and they said, where are you and what's the nature? And I was struggling to talk, to actually even move my lips and mouth was really, really difficult. I couldn't breathe, so I couldn't get the words out. It's pathetic, really, isn't it? And I told them what was happening to me, and they asked my age and whether I was, a relatively healthy person who was trying to get through this phone call. And I think something happened. And it was a bit like when the nurse was in the hospital and she kind of realized what was happening to me and took control and she soothed me and cared for me and I started to come out of this thing. Well, the person on the phone in the ambulance service kind of did the same thing. The paramedic did the same thing. And she said, I think it's probably not a heart attack. It's probably a panic attack. And if you sit there for a while, take your time, get your breath back, you should be fine. We're here. We will call you back in a couple of minutes. You can call us again, but this is what I think is the situation. And she said, we do get people calling us all the time saying that they're having heart attacks and it's actually just a panic attack. Now, just a panic attack is the wrong way to say it because actually they're extremely dangerous things, panic attacks. And anxiety is extremely dangerous, which is why I'm doing this channel, to recognize it and to not be ashamed of it. So I finished that call. I eventually got back to normal. I felt so guilty for sitting on the hard shoulder on the motorway because I knew you're not supposed to be there. But of course, it's there for things like that. And why was I guilty about it? But that's what it's like to be an anxious person. So I got myself together and I carried on to see my girlfriend. Now, that relationship would end shortly after that. And actually, the place that I had gotten into, having that panic attack, was a buildup of things that had pushed my usual anxiety levels up and up and up and up. I was losing my hair. I was not looking healthy. People around me could see this. I was losing weight. But I couldn't see it. I didn't know. And this was the wake-up call that I needed. And it's kind of funny that that hospital appointment felt like the roadmap to here's a panic attack. I spoke to my mum about it and she said, you need to go to the doctor. So I booked an appointment to see the doctor that afternoon. The doctor was fantastic and helped me to understand the severity of the situation I had just been in and how bad things must have been for me to get to that situation. The doctor immediately prescribed 3 weeks off and we discussed taking anti-anxiety medication. There are reasons why I didn't do that. Many people have great experiences on them. There were some reasons why I didn't want to go down that route at that point, so I decided not to. I did have some short-term medication prescribed to me, so diazepam, things like that. So if I was in a situation and I could feel I was losing control, then I'd be able to take something just to take the edge off. But that was for emergency situations only. And for the next 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, I struggled with regular severe panic attacks, debilitating panic attacks. They would happen when I was driving. They would happen for no reason at all. There were many days where I couldn't get to work because I was just, again, I would feel it happening and the fear of it happening would exacerbate the situation. So you start panicking about the panic because you're so out of control and helpless in that situation. And even if you know that it's a panic attack, when it's that physically severe, it's scary. You think you're going to die. That's how bad it can be. It started happening in other areas of my life. So I started panicking on aeroplanes, which had never happened to me before. I was fine with flying, but then it's like your anxiety needs to find something to stick onto, and it says, this is now going to become a problem for you, and this is going to become a trigger. I still struggle with it, and I can have a panic attack now. I don't. It's very, very rare that I can be in that situation, but it's because I can see the signs, and because I've tried to reduce the overall levels of anxiety that I experience. I'm definitely going to shoot some content about how to manage this, and how I have managed it without medication. But I just wanted this video to explain, for those of you who don't know, perhaps, or maybe you're dealing with somebody who is struggling with this and you can't understand what that must be like. Or if you're experiencing it for the first time and wondering, what the hell is happening to me? Where did this come from? And why is this happening to me? I wanted to explain how severe it can be and how physically challenging and scary it can be. That is what real chronic anxiety and panic can look like. It can look like a heart attack. It can look like I feel like I'm about to die. So if you're experiencing that feeling, you're not alone. There are those of us who know that feeling, and we know and understand how severe that is. You deserve to be heard and understood and never sidelined or derided because you have anxiety. And if you're experiencing that, you're not alone.